Welcome to Shaky Sports Journeys. Thanks again for joining us. Great guest for you today. Somebody who has done some fantastic things in the Paralympic world and has also achieved medals personally as a Paralympian. So it's going to be great to talk to this gentleman. I'm talking about Tim Reddish CBE. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thank you for giving me your time. What I want to do is take you on a bit of a journey today. So, getting your imagination, woken up first thing in the morning. I hope you've had your coffee. But I want to take you back to your childhood. Tell me a little bit about your family background, your childhood, where you grew up, etc.
I still live in the great city of Nottingham, and I was born in Nottingham. I was premature born, less than 2 pounds. So that was in 1957. So I had a challenging start to life because most babies that were less than 2 pounds born at that time of the era we're in didn't survive. So there was something inherent there from day one that I'm going to be a survivor. Little did we know how much of a survivor I'd need to be. So I was premature born, eldest of 5 children, urban street kid, dysfunctional family, and at times I was abused. My dad liked his beer, my mum did occasionally as well. So we were a bit of a dysfunctional family, and it was challenging, eldest of 5. So I looked after my brothers and sisters best I could. There was a 13-year gap between me being the eldest and my youngest sister, who was 13 years. So from that point of view, it was interesting. It's growing up in the 70s with things like the old 3-day working weeks and strikes and inflation very, very high. It was challenging, but little did I know how that would prepare me for the future.
Wow, you had to grow up at a very, very young age, Tim. You never really had much time to progress into adulthood. It sounds like you were by the age of 12, 13 already, going into adulthood. But you're right, it must have set you up for the challenges that you faced ahead. But more power to you. You're obviously a very, very strong person, mentally, physically, and it's inspiring. When did your sporting interest start? Swimming strikes me as something you were interested in from quite young.
Yeah, I was very fortunate because my dad was in the forces when I was a youngster. So I actually learned to swim at the age of 5 out in Hong Kong when my dad was based out there. Because the good thing about being out there, it was too hot to go to school or nursery or anything in the afternoon. So I used to get the opportunity to go around to the local swimming pool at the barracks. So I learned to swim there. So swimming became good for me because I'm not the tallest person in the world. I'm probably a little bit gobby and a little bit lippy. And the one thing I was always good at, regardless of how big my friends were at school, was swimming and sport. So swimming enabled me to really shine, I suppose, to give me that bit of self-belief in myself, because obviously when you're the eldest of 5 and in the area we're in, and the schools I went to, they weren't the easiest times, but it gave me that little bit of self-belief and confidence.
What did you go on to do at kind of university? Did you go to university?
No, well, interesting. I started work as a paper boy and a Saturday lad at a butcher's from the age of 12. So I've worked since the age of 12, and part of our challenge was that whatever we earned, 50% went into the family pot. For those of us old enough, remember the old bread series from Liverpool, where whenever you earned anything, 50% went in the family pot. So even from the age of 12, whatever I earned, 50% went in the family pot. So I'd always work. So I left school as soon as I can because I needed to help the family and my brothers and sisters. So I never went to university. I don't know whether I'd have enjoyed it. I think I would, but we didn't have the opportunity. So I left school and became an apprentice, which I think apprenticeships are absolutely fantastic. So I can say now I'm the only qualified blind butcher in the world because I became an apprentice butcher.
working from a very young age, you served an apprentice, would have set you up nicely, I'd imagine, for what you were going to go on to do. But I look at your CV, and you were involved in sport pretty much from a young age in your working career as well. You were a manager of a leisure centre.
Yeah, well, what happened was when I was a youngster, I was a competent swimmer. I swam nationally as an age grouper, so I was a competent swimmer. And then, as you say, I became a butcher, and then I dabbled a couple of things, and then became a swimming teacher by chance. An opportunity came along that I grabbed, so I became a swimming teacher and a coach, and then ended up being a facility manager. So I got that opportunity, and during that time, I was coaching, and I was enjoying the different types of leisure facility management that came in. So I had varied life as a job. It was a little old-fashioned swimming pool with the old cubicles down the side, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. One day I'd be raking an old boiler out, another day I'd be doing water treatment, another day I'd be showing people round and things like that. So it was a very, very great life for me at that time. I thought I enjoyed it.
So did you enjoy the coaching element? You obviously enjoyed the individual side of this sport where you were swimming, but you seem to take to coaching at quite a young age. Was that something that just came naturally to you, or something you just wanted to give back to the sport?
It was giving back, because I started off, as I say, as a swimming teacher. So I used to work between 30 and 40 hours a week teaching youngsters to swim from local schools, and also then with swimming lessons after school, and also on a Saturday morning the class. And it's interesting, somebody asked me recently, out of all the things I've done, what would you wish to go back and do again? And that's teaching swimming. The satisfaction you get from somebody who are having that, not so much fear, sometimes it's fear, but that raw unexperienced, nervous challenge of coming into water, and then you making them safe in water, and then you make them competent in swimming, for me was an absolute fantastic reward for me, because it gave me so much. So it was a way of giving back, and even to this day, I can go into Nottingham, to the city centre, and somebody will come up and say, "Hey, up, Tim, I want to introduce you to my children because you taught me to swim. And I still talk about you now, and we've followed you since you've lost your sight." So it's really, really good, that, and it was something I loved doing. And then the coaching, and then facility management, and then other things came along later that built on from that.
You had something that happened in your life when you were 31. I'm going to call it RP, and you can shed some more light on that. You mentioned loss of sight that you faced, but please, can you explain to the viewers a little bit more about RP?
Well, it was interesting. Just before my 31st birthday, my wife came home from work, and she'd met a cousin, and the cousin said to her, "How's Tim doing?" "Fine." "Is he okay?" "Yeah." Does he bump into things?" "Yeah, yeah." "Is his sight all right?" "Does he bump into things at night?" She goes, "Well, yeah, but we all do that." "Yeah." "Oh, I need to tell you that we found out that there is a genetic hereditary condition, eye condition, in the family that nobody knew about." So my wife had to then come home and try and sit me down and talk to me and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, mate, but you might be going blind here." So we had to go through all the processes and the diagnosis. So on my 31st birthday, this consultant said to me, "Yes, Mr. Reddish, you do have retinitis pigmentosa. It's hereditary, it's genetic, and there's no cure, and you're going to go blind." Now, that was back in 1988, and it was still new then as a condition. I had two sons, so it was a bit of a scary time. I'd got a 5.5-year-old and a 7-year-old. So for us, it's a bit of a challenge. And the 7-year-old at the time, you actually know, is my eldest son, Paul. So for us, it was a big challenge. So the scary thing was, in those days, the males were still predominantly hunter warrior. Both my wife and I worked. I was a leisure facility manager. I'm thinking, God, what's going to happen here? Because there was a huge stigma, even then in the late 80s, towards disability, and in particular blindness. We had some major challenges. We couldn't get a mortgage because we couldn't get insurance and all those types of things. So it was a huge challenge to us to adapt and change. But I think we did okay. That mental toughness and that resilience from that young age, and that street kid stuff, I think that helped us. And my wife was absolutely fantastic in just saying, "Well, we just got to deal with it. Let's just get on with it."
How quickly does when you're diagnosed, how quickly does your sight actually go completely? Was it over time?
Yeah, I was losing sight every year. What happens is with this retinitis pigmentosa or RP is it's like a tunnel vision. So it's like looking through to start with maybe a smarty tube, and then that vision closes. So your outside vision closes in, and you might have a little bit of central vision, and you have night blindness because your rods don't work because they're blacked out. So I had all these challenges where this vision was closing in, and I say it took 7 years, but most of the people around me said it took 6 years. I just wouldn't accept it for the final year. So and eventually for me it closed down. I had a secondary problem as well. So I went from riding a motorbike one day to 6 years later having no functional vision whatsoever.
That's it's sad to hear about. But what amazes me with you, Tim, and when I look at your story and look at your journey, is what you managed to achieve after being diagnosed with RP. What gave you you talk about a very supportive wife, and you've talked about the fact that you had two young sons who I'm sure drove you as well. But what made you turn to being a Paralympian? When did that come about?
Well, it came back fairly quickly because at the time I'd been working with an Olympic swimmer. I was co-coaching an Olympic swimmer, and two, the year before and also that year, I'd been working with a national disability swim team. It wasn't even called para swim team then, it was a disability swim team, and they used to come and use my facility. I'd let them in when we closed to the public, so they'd come in and train and things like that. So I'd got some experience and exposure, but didn't understand it that well. So this swimmer who I was co-coaching qualified for the Olympic Games in Seoul in 1988, and she came back. Her name is Maggie Kelly, and she came back and gave me her commemorative medal from Seoul Olympic Games. And she said, "Tim, here's my commemorative medal." She said, "Paralympics were straight after us. You ought to give that a go because you're not a bad swimmer." Because I was still swimming occasionally just to enjoy swimming, and I did other sports as well. And I said to her I was too old and too slow, and she twisted my arm and said, "I want you to go to Barcelona in '92 Paralympic Games and give me your commemorative medal." So I proudly have her commemorative medal, and she proudly has my commemorative medal. So that was what sort of like gave me the catalyst, and then I just literally got on with it. Just said, "I've got to make this happen." And I'm a big believer in life that if you want to do something, you've got to make it happen yourself. It's no good relying on anybody else. You've got to be accountable, and you've just got to get out there and just do it. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. You should never be afraid of failure, but you'll never forgive yourself if you don't try it, because you'll never know whether you've failed or not. And that was good for me. Fortunately, I had great support from family. They're the ones that make the sacrifices. Athletes don't. I don't like it when I hear athletes say they make sacrifices. They don't. It's a great life being an elite athlete. Absolutely fantastic. You work hard, but it's a great life. It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. And your family and friends and your work colleagues, they're the ones that make the sacrifices because they bend over backwards to help you and make these things happen. And it was interesting, when I had the bad times, it was actually my two sons that kept me going. They were the ones, if my performances were bad, or I come home from training and I'm wrecked and everything else, I'm saying, I don't know why I'm doing this. It was my sons that pushed me because they enjoyed their sport as well, and they were pretty good as well. So they're the ones that helped me keep focused in those early times when it was hard.
Tell me about some of your achievements in the pool. I mean, you achieved, when I'm looking at your CV, I mean, there must be an impressive, I hope, trophy cabinet in the Reddish household, because there's quite a few medals that were achieved along the way. But can you tell me about some of them?
Yeah, well, when you say trophy cabinet, it's a carrier bag in the attic, but that's just us. It's just the way we are. Well, the journey was interesting because I started off not sure where I'd be or whether I'd be good enough actually for the Paralympic Games. So what was good as well is I eventually started training with Nova Centurion, which was the local squad, the Nottinghamshire squad for swimming, and I was the first disabled person that was fully integrated into that squad. And my coach then was a guy called Bill Furness, who I've got the ultimate time and respect. He's now the head coach of the Olympic swimming program. So he's responsible for making that happen within the Olympic movement. So I went there and not sure. So my biggest challenge was qualifying for Barcelona. So when I qualified, that was an absolutely fantastic achievement for me. I just thought, I'm there, I'm on the team. I can't let this opportunity go. So I went to Barcelona, and I was very, very proud and privileged to represent, one, the nation, and two, my city and my county and everything else. And I came back with a bronze and silver medal. So that was great. And what was interesting then, when we came back from Barcelona, we came back, and there was the only people that knew about it, me, was my local paper, my wife, my two kids, my family, and my guide dog. They were the ones that really knew about it. And the BBC did an hour and a quarter review program after the Paralympic Games, and that we're only talking 1992 when that happened. So we'll probably come on to some of the later things that we've achieved, but then to where we are now is a fantastic journey as well, which I've been privileged to be part of. So eventually I did Barcelona 92, I did Atlanta 96, and I then came back out of retirement for Sydney 2000, because I was getting a bit old then, and I was doing other things. I was doing triathlon then, because I was getting bored with swimming. So I came out of retirement because they wanted me to be part of a relay squad, made the team. I got the old crappy silver medal there. But hey, I came away with 3 silvers and 2 bronze over the 3 games. So I'm very, very pleased with that, and lots of records and lots of other world titles and things. So I'm not blasé, but they're the past. You're only as good as your next performance. They just prepare you for the future. I'm very proud, but to me, it's about what do I do next.
Well, out with the pool is what really I really want to hear about as well. I mean, what you achieved in the pool is phenomenal. It's amazing to hear about, you know, how many high level games that you took part in over a long period of time as well. To come out of retirement in 2000, that's very impressive. You went on to hold some really pivotal roles. You became a national performance director and the chairman at another stage of para swimming and the British Paralympic Association. Can you tell me how you got involved with these roles, and tell me a bit about what you got involved in during that time in those positions?
Okay, so prior to Atlanta and up to Atlanta 1996, disability swimming was coordinated, organised, and run by the British Disabled Swim Squad. It was a charity. We weren't involved with the local governing body like British Swimming and Swim England. I actually rang them up when I first wanted to get involved in swimming as a disabled athlete, and I said, I'm disabled. I'm not a bad swimmer. I'm interested in this disability swimming. And they turned around and said, well, we don't do that. That's disability, not us. So on that day, something triggered me to say, this in the future has to change. Little did I know what part I'd be as part of that change. So 96 was BSSAD, was the swim squad. And then after that, British Swimming took responsibility, and they asked me if I would get involved in helping them write their first plan to get some lottery funding. So I as a volunteer, helped them write their first plan to get funding from UK sport. So that was back in 97. So they got funding. And in 1998, I jumped ship from a very good job within local authority as a sports development officer for both swimming and disability sport, and also a pension, a steady income. And I went home and told my wife that I've seen a job I fancy where it's it'll be a 1-year contract, less money than what we're on, and no pension. So I took the risk. And again, that's another lesson that you learn over the years, that sometimes you need to take that leap of faith. And from that that pure opportunity to take the risk, I ended up becoming the national performance director for the Paralympic swimming team. So the Paralympic swimming team that you see now that went to Tokyo, I'm not involved now there. Now I was there from 98 to 2013. I was part of establishing that program. I was one of the founders of making that whole system work. So I'm very proud of that. National performance director, taking teams to Paralympic Games and World Championships. And then again, I was asked if I would consider being the chairman of the British Paralympic Association, because they wanted somebody different in the membership, and I had to be challenged. So I had to challenge the incumbent chairman, which was not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. But I did, and I was elected, and I was there to effect change. So the British Paralympic Association, we came away from Beijing in 2008, in a good position, but not brilliant. And then leading into London 2012. So I was there as the chairman for 8 years, and they were financially more secure when I'd finished. And we had to be part of the London 2012. So I was on the board of the organising committee of London 2012. So I changed the whole structure and governance of British Paralympic Association to be fit for purpose. I learned a lot from London 2012, and it was just a fabulous opportunity. Not so much, whilst it was a privilege to be head of delegation of the British team, the Paralympic team that went out there, I didn't need to do that for me, because I'd been to numerous games as an athlete. So I didn't need to go as an administrator and thinking, but it was about putting things right for the athletes. Like, remember me saying that there was only an hour and a quarter after Barcelona 1992. And also when I went to Barcelona 1992, I was selected, and also I had to pay. So when I became chairman, I said, this has got to change. Things have to change. So we were more financially better. We had a fantastic sponsorship deal with kit providers that gave the athletes the same kit that they have at the Olympic Games. So all these sorts of things we put in place. But also the key for me was I was on the board of London 2012 when the decision was made to appoint Channel 4 as the host broadcaster for London 2012. Now that was a brave decision, because they'd never covered disability sport. BBC had, they lost it. Channel 4 came in, and to be honest, I had some challenging times with the membership and the sports, because they said, what's Channel 4 going to do? Because we trust the BBC. And I said, well, let's judge them after London 2012. Now, the way Channel 4 did it and what they do now is the envy of every other Paralympic nation around the world. So whilst I didn't make the decision, I was party to that decision, and also influencing how Channel 4 would work. So for me, that's a great consequence and impact of the games, host games, that the world have benefited from, not just the UK.
Absolutely, absolutely. What gives you more self-satisfaction? Achieving medals yourself, or what you've achieved to open doors for many other Paralympians out there?
Opening doors and influencing. The medals are what the medals have done, and me participating, is that, one, it's given me self-belief and the confidence to go on and do other things. I've learned so much. Without that, it wouldn't have been the stepping stone to the other things. But for example, Beijing 2008, I was invited. I was also the chairman of the International Federation for Disability Swimming then in 2008 at the Paralympic Games. I was invited by the Chinese delegation to come and meet somebody. I thought, hey, what we done? Have we disqualified a Chinese athlete and I'm in trouble? But no, they wanted me to meet a young blind swimmer, 16 years of age. And I'll never forget the day. We sat there and we were talking away, and he thanked me. And I said, well, why are you thanking me? I said, you just smashed all my records. I says, and you're an absolute fabulous swimmer. And he says, well, at the age of 9, he was institutionalized in a center. And then Beijing were the host nation. And he got the opportunity to come out of being institutionalized to being in an environment where he was actually supported because he was a good swimmer. But also what he said, that what I've done and demonstrated as a totally blind person gave him belief that he could go on and do the same. And there's lots of different things, like not just me, but lots of para athletes have had that impact on other young disabled individuals around the world. So that to me is the, I don't like the word legacy, it's the impact of the games and this great movement that's around Paralympic sport.
Where is Paralympic sport now? I mean, you've gone through decades of it as an athlete and as an administrator. Where would you say it is now compared to where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Oh, it's more of a household known. And this is the terminology that some of our athletes use. So please, this is something that not to worry about. We're not a freak show anymore, because we know that we were seen as, oh, it's a bit of a freak show. Look at these people with no limbs doing this, that, and the other. And people were looking at our disability rather than our ability. Now we are on parallel terms. That's why it's called the Paralympic Games, because it's parallel to the Olympic Games. We are respected. We know that we have to work hard, but also people that observe also know that we have to work hard. And some of the sports and the techniques that's used and how the individuals have had to adapt those techniques is absolutely phenomenal. But not only that, it gives pride to them, but also it gives a platform for the world, because this is the Paralympic Games are the third largest sporting event in the world, and it's the only platform in the world where the whole disability community can come together, but also showcase what abilities we have. Now, there are some individuals out there that say that, well, I'll never be a Paralympian, and you can't expect every disabled person to be as good as you. No, we can't. I'm a pretty good swimmer, have been, still am for my age, and I'm blind. I'm a pretty good cyclist on a tandem, right? But I'm obviously rubbish at running, but I still do it. So that you can still participate in things regardless. See, you will find that there will be our elite athletes out there that are phenomenally good at what sport they do, but you'll find that you are better than them in some of the sports you do. So that's the key here. It's that opportunity to demonstrate.
A question then, like that's interesting you say that. Not every person with a disability who takes up sport is going to get to the Paralympics. That's just like every person that takes up any sport. They're not all going to get to the top level. Is there a lot of is there enough out there for disabled sports people to be able to go? Is there enough clubs across the board in the UK? There will never be enough clubs like this. Like, for example, I bet you there's not enough judo clubs in the country, regardless of whether you're disabled or not. There won't be enough taekwondo clubs. So there's never enough clubs per se. But where the challenge is for us is that sometimes we need a little bit more time and patience and specificity to bridge the gap for us to adapt to the sport. And not all the clubs out there, they fear the unknown. They don't think they have the skills to do it, but they do. Adapting is easier than you think. But also, we try to provide opportunities across different sectors. So the elite performance sector is pretty good. The club sector is pretty good, but there's that little bridging gap from starting to participate in a sport to then what we call in the middle range, where you might need a good club that might be either integrated or what I call designated. I don't like the word, distinctive is better. I don't like it to be a disability club. It's just distinctive, just happens the way it works. So there's never enough, regardless of what sport you're in, but it's getting better. I think the key here is that the knowledge and the awareness of the coaching community and the sporting community is more opening and welcoming to individuals with a disability to come along and participate, because that's the key, is participation first. Let's not worry about becoming elite. It's about having a go. I was fortunate and privileged that I was able to swim from a young age, and I had a very good coach as a young age that gave me all the skills. So I didn't have to learn the skills as a blind person. I just had to learn how to
relearn how to become an athlete again.
Interesting, really interesting, and good to hear that there is participation, more of it than there once was, and hopefully long may that continue, and we have more and more. I mean, it's going to be something that I'm going to start finding out more about in Scotland, about how much there actually is out there for people from a disability background to go into. Something I wanted to ask you also about was discrimination. I've recently been a player who's spoken out about institutional racism in cricket, but discrimination goes across the board, whether it's gender, whether it's disability. But I wanted to ask you about discrimination within disability and sport. What's it like? What kind of challenges are faced, and is it something that's improving?
It is improving, but it's still there, and it's always going to be there. I don't think we will ever stamp out discrimination completely, ever, because it's one of those things. I've thought about this a lot, actually, around the cricket stuff, and I read the football stuff and everything else, because the different communities have different opportunities to raise concerns and highlight the fact that we're just the same as everybody else. We tickle as we laugh, cut as we bleed. We all have to eat, and we all have to do these things from the other end. So for me, I get frustrated when people are discriminated against, and it seems to be, because you think about it, even now, if you go and listen to kids playing in a playground, right, they can all be the same age, they can all have the same background, and they might all be from one ethnicity, but they'll be discriminated against each other in some way, shape, or form. So I don't think we'll ever stand. What we've got to get to is that we need to be aware that we are all equal, that we're all on this earth for the same reason, and that's to be the best we can and do the best we can in our own lives. And eventually, we're all going to pass away. So we've got to find that happy medium. But in the disability community, there is a stigma and there is discrimination. I've had it. I've experienced it, even to this day. Even now, I'm 64 years of age. I've been blind for a long time now, but I still get it. I don't get angry about it anymore. I just try and educate. So for me, I'm very pleased that there are platforms out there where discrimination needs to be highlighted, but we need to find a mechanism to say, guys, what's wrong? Like, for example, I'd love every single interview panel in the world to have a blind person on it, because it wouldn't matter then what clothes they're wearing, what hairstyle they've got, or how good their presentation is. You'll be evaluating the person, which is important, and that means a lot to me, because I get so frustrated, because I've worked with athletes from all around the world, and it really does annoy me when I see the challenges of some of our athletes. One, because of their ethnic background. Two, because of their colour. Then three, they have a disability. I'm an old, stale white male with a disability, and I haven't experienced some of the things they have, and it's horrendous. And I want to get angry, but for me, it's about how do we try and educate these people, because it is a lack of education. Well, not just lack of education. I think it's a lack of patience from some of them, to be honest.
Do you think?
Sorry, I get angry about it internally, but externally it doesn't help.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm going to come on to your son at the moment, Paul Reddish, OBE. I should say you must first and foremost, you must be very proud.
I am. I'm proud of both of my sons. They've chosen different sectors and different work, but Paul's done a great job. He loves what he does, and he has some very positive views, and he, like me, he's relentless in what he does, and he won't give in.
Well, I can vouch for that as well. And it's interesting what you said there.
He can't beat me at swimming anymore, though.
He can't beat. It's interesting what you said there about I can get angry internally.
Yeah.
but externally, there's no point. And that's something that Paul has instilled in me, because as much as I've been internally annoyed about some things, I maybe don't always put it across the best externally. I do my best, but I've made some errors. And, you know, Paul's been a great mentor for me in that way, just to kind of guide me on, you know, there isn't really anything good to come out of that. You know, it's about how we do things moving forward, bring people along with us. Another point is, not everybody is always going to see eye to eye with your views, but you need to learn to bring those people along on the journey as well. So that really resonates. But I can see where he gets it from now. That, you know, he's obviously been inspired and learned from his father. You know, I'm proud of him. You must be very, very proud of him.
Well, it's been great, and like you say, it's that you mentioned a good point there, the journey. Okay, now a lot of people I come across, individuals, whether they're athletes, come to me and say, I want to go to the Paralympic Games and win a gold medal. I said, well, that's the outcome. I said, the journey is more important than the outcome, because if you get the journey right, you're more likely to get the outcome that you've earned. And that's the key. We've got to get the journey. We have to bring people along on the journey. At the IPC, at Tokyo, we launched a campaign called We the 15. And it's about highlighting the human rights under the Convention of Rights for People with Disabilities. And we're working with a lot of big organizations, and it's about the 1.2 billion people in the world that have a disability. So they've never had a platform, never had a voice. So the IPC want to highlight it, and we've got a campaign that will run for 10 years, and it'll take a while to get people on board. Like, we want to get lots of people on board around, we believe there should be a disabled person on every single corporate board in the world. So there's all these sorts of things, and even to the things that some people don't get the same opportunities that we get in the UK. Like we get access, maybe not as much as we'd like to, or as quick as we'd like to. We get access to accessible technology or accessible equipment as a disabled person. Some nations, they don't have a chance. They don't have a chance, bless them. They've got no chance. So it's a human right for them to have that. It's a human right for a person in Africa to be educated, never mind with a disability. So there's the sort of things we're trying to put a platform together at the IPC to bring that to the attention of the world. And that will happen, and it's the same with anything really, with the LGBTQ plus, with racism. We've got to have a platform, but it's got to be the right platform that people will want to buy into, because if we get it wrong, they'll just ignore us. They'll think that they just think that we're beating a drum all the time, and unless you change the rhythm or the beat, it'll just become background noise.
Very interesting, and I take inspiration from what you're saying, because you've already been dealing with a lot of challenges that people from a disabled background have faced when it comes to discrimination. It's great to hear that the campaign is in place, and I agree that being involved with a racism campaign, I think we all need to come together and work moving forward for the betterment of for everybody. You mentioned it earlier on, everybody should be equal. There should be no discrimination. You're right as well. I don't think we'll ever get rid of discrimination completely.
No.
If we can get close to it, that would be a good
start. But you remember, we're mammals, okay? We're mammals. We live, breathe, even, and we need food and whatever. You've only got to follow nature. Nature is discriminatory with the wildlife and everything else. So it is inherent in some way, but we've got to minimize that. I just want to ask you, funny, I have a bit of a, I'm just going to throw something at you. It's a little bit off field. I hate the terminology protected characteristics. I don't believe in protected characteristics. I don't want to be a protected species. I believe that we're distinctive. We don't need protecting. I don't need protecting. The world might need protecting from me if I get hold of them, but I don't need protecting. We're distinctive. We are different, but everybody's different. It's just that we're a bit more different, whether that's because of your ethnicity, whether it's because of your religion, or whether you have an impairment. We're just different. And people out there need to just adapt. Sorry.
I agree. I agree. It's we should embrace everybody's differences, shouldn't we? It shouldn't
Yeah.
be. It shouldn't be a. You know, it shouldn't cause any. It shouldn't cause any issues whatsoever. We should just and if anything, I find it interesting speaking to somebody, you know, who's had some of the challenges that you've had, and to hear how you've adapted to that, adjusted your life, and still went on to do some amazing things. I think that's brilliant. I think it's an inspiration to me. I would love to sit and talk to you all day long about these things. I think that's maybe what's missing. You know, I think people maybe are threatened by these things sometimes and don't feel that they can have these types of conversations. So sometimes the elephant in the room, if racism comes up, some people just, oh, can't talk about that. You know, let's move back from that subject. It makes me mad sometimes, because why can't we talk about it? If we talk about it, it might be healthier moving forward.
We had a very interesting the board, when I was on the board of the International Paralympic Committee. We had a we had a workshop as the board. Now remember, we're a multicultural board from all around the world. Males, females, wheelchair users, blind, from every region of the world. So we're on a board there, and we're talking about Latin Americans, Africans, so Europeans, etc., etc. So we had a workshop on sexual harassment, but it was more than about sexual harassment. And one of the things that came out of it was two words. Well, two words that you should always remember: wanted and welcomed. And if you think about that, well, it's not wanted and it's not welcome, so don't do it when it's a negative content. And that's the two things that I always remember from that workshop. And it was a fabulous half a day that I spent on that, and having that discussion around the table and very open. And I think that's the key here is you've got to be able to have a discussion. Like I don't do it so much now. I'm at the age now where I don't want to be looking for work, but I always do work as a volunteer, but I don't do the keynote and the individual coaching with people as much as I used to. But one of the things I always say to people is, look, I says, with me, you're in a safe environment. You'll be worried about using X or Y terminology. I said, what I'm open to for this session we are doing, this half an hour, I said, we are in a safe environment. You can say what you like, but I will pull you up if I think it's inappropriate or it's not the right terminology. And then I hope you'll never do it again. Whereas some people, and this is where we as the disability community have to get better, we sometimes jump on somebody not having the right terminology rather than letting them have that terminology, but educating them and re-educating them. That's where I come from on all this. But you've got to have a safe environment, because if the environment isn't safe, then they'll be put out to hang.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with correcting somebody, but like you say, if it's in a safe environment, then it's all good. But I think that's something that people fear the most: the backlash of saying something wrong, and then they're hung out to dry. And that's not a positive for anybody.
No, and with the new modern era and social media, we know that a 3 or 4 words could be the only words that are that they've been exposed to when it's been took completely out of context.
So some really powerful stuff there. You know, if you're saying something and you don't feel that it makes somebody feel wanted or welcome, then don't say it. I think that's really powerful. But also that you need to be prepared to have the difficult conversations sometimes. And sometimes you might say the wrong thing, but if done so in a safe environment, you can get educated and you can be better moving forward. It doesn't have to be that somebody says, you know, uses the wrong terminology and that's the end of that person. You know, they can't learn or be educated or be better. So it's all really making me think about things in an in-depth way. do you now see people, I would love to see all of this come together. You mentioned earlier, you've got now the Black Lives Matter movement, you've got things in place for LGBT, you've mentioned the campaigns that are in place for people from disability backgrounds. Can we all learn from each other?
I think that's the next phase, isn't it? It's right. So this is the first time the disability community have got together, whether you're hearing impaired, stroke, deaf, whether you're visually impaired or blind, physical impairment, learning disability, all those, first time they've all got together on the same platform ever. And that's amazing. So there's going to be some learning opportunities over this. So we need to get our act into place and to get that recognition that LGBTQ plus have. But at some stage, somewhere, somebody's got to sit up and smell the coffee and say, actually, we need to get some of these people around in the same room, because there will be some learning opportunities here that are about the whole rather than a piece. And that's up to, I'm going to say it, but it sometimes frustrates me. It's got to happen at governmental level and then down. Because they've got to hear. I was offered an opportunity to join a board not too long ago, and I said, "Why do I need to go and join that board when they'll be happy to listen to me, but they won't want to hear what I say?" So that's my philosophy in life now. I'm looking at new opportunities, new ventures on different. I want to work on boards and where I can influence again. But there's not too many years left where I can keep doing this, because as you get older, people think you get stale as well, and your brain don't work anymore. So I'll have two disadvantages. Then one, I'll be blind, and two, my brain don't work. So that's what I want to do, is to be able to shape and influence and work with some of the younger community and getting them to be brave as well. Because, isn't it? I don't know what it was like for you at school and things, but also where does it change? Because I've worked with young kids. I'm talking 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and they're all together. They'll be working together. There'll be the young kid with a disability integrated in their class, and they'll all work with the kid and whatever it is. When does it change? When does that young disabled kid or that young black kid become different to them? At what age does it switch? Because it does at some stage.
It does. It's a really good question. It would be hard to put my finger on exactly what the answer is.
Yeah.
But you're so right. I mean, when I went to nursery as a kid, I was around all different types of people. And everybody just integrated. I think you go into the teenage years, and the influences maybe from parents or other peers that you're close to, that seems to change a wee bit of the mindsets.
Yeah. So we now need to be working with the generation of 8-year-olds and above, because we've lost their parents.
Yeah, I think it's
if you think about it.
It is. It's very hard to change the mindset of people who are a lot later in life, and they're quite set in stone. I'm not saying it's impossible, but overall, it's difficult to change a large proportion of people's mindsets. Whereas if you change it from young, and what I find is the youth can then start to influence the adults and the seniors that they rub shoulders with, and slowly but surely you can change mindsets.
Yeah, and that's what London 2012 did towards disability. It changed people's perceptions and mindsets towards disability. That stigma became different. There was less of it.
Yeah, Mr. Reddish, it has been. You've got me thinking about lots of different things. When I watch this back, I'll probably process more of it, and really, start to think about things in depth, because there's a lot of things you've talked about that I can relate to from a different type of discrimination. And I think discrimination exists across the board. And if we can all educate, and I think something we've discussed would be great, is to get more of the boards at the top to come together and learn from each other. But you're right, it needs to filter down from government level and that's when you can really start making changes. Listen, I would love to meet you in person sometime. I'm down south occasionally, so if I ever make it to Nottingham, it would be great to meet you. However, you do have a son in Bonnie, Scotland, so if you make it up,
Yeah, no. And one of my best mates is in Paisley.
Oh, right, okay. Well, just round the corner then. I'm in south side of Glasgow, so please don't hesitate to give me a shout if you're.
No, he was my roommate for years as an athlete. He was a quadriplegic.
Wow.
So we keep in touch.
Maybe I could talk to him one day. Talk to him about his journey.
Yeah, no, Kenny be good. Kenny Cairns.
I'll look him up.
Name.
Kenny
yeah,
Cairns,
look him up. Yeah, and if you want an intro, just let me know.
I will do. It's been inspiring to talk to you today.
My pleasure. And if you want to chat afterwards anytime, just drop me a note. Say, do you want to just chew the fat, have a chat, or whatever it is? Do you want to explore this? I'm more than happy. It's what I do now. It keeps my brain active, but also it's good to get cross learnings.
Absolutely. I mean, I've learned a lot talking to you about the challenges that you've faced and other Paralympians have faced. And it's really good to hear that it's in a healthier state, but we can always get better, can't we?
Well, the world is about continuous improvement, and what we have to remember is that clock face ticks. The old analog clock, the second hand moves, the minute hand moves, and the hour hand moves. So time will always move forwards. It never goes backwards, and there's not enough money in the world to buy back the time we've just lost. So we have to learn from it.
Absolutely. Wise words, sir. Thank you very much for your time today.
That's my pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Good luck with it.